My name's Max, and if you ask my extended family to describe me, weird is probably the nicest thing you'd hear. I've always been the odd one out, the kid who tinkered with electronics instead of playing football, who wore secondhand hoodies when everyone else wore polos, who quoted obscure sci-fi movies at dinner. Growing up, I never really fit the family mold. Most of my cousins were athletes or straight-A students on track to become lawyers, doctors, or something shiny. Me? I barely scraped by in school, constantly pulled apart old radios and rewired things that didn't need rewiring. I was awkward, quiet, and didn't really care what anyone thought. I had my own little world, and that was enough, but apparently that wasn't enough for my cousin Laura. Laura was the family golden child. Blonde, bright, popular. Think the classic girl next door, but with a bit of a mean streak if you got too close. She was always nice enough to my face, but it was clear she didn't think much of me. During family get-togethers, she'd laugh at my nerdy t-shirts or ask me if I ever planned to get a real job. You know, jokes that aren't really jokes. Still, when I heard she was getting married, I expected an invitation. I didn't think we were close, but we were family. Plus, I hadn't done anything to her, and I always kept to myself at gatherings. So when invites started going out and my mailbox stayed empty, I was confused. I didn't want to be dramatic, but it stung. A little. My parents got their invite, my brother got his. I didn't. Eventually, I asked my mom about it. She tried to play it off. "Oh, maybe it got lost in the mail," she said, avoiding eye contact. "Mom," she sighed, then quietly said, "Laura mentioned she was trying to keep the guest list small. She said something about vibes and wanting it to be a certain kind of event." I didn't press further. I knew what that meant. Too weird. Not Instagrammable enough. Not part of the polished image she wanted for her perfect day. I laughed it off in front of my mom, but I'll admit, it hit me harder than I expected. I didn't need to be the center of attention. I didn't even want to be at a big wedding. But being intentionally left out, it reminded me of high school all over again, where I was the last one picked, the one no one wanted in the photo, so I stayed quiet. Didn't text, didn't ask questions. I figured, if they didn't want me there, then I wouldn't be. Instead, I threw myself into my work. After years of freelancing and side projects, I'd finally built a solid career as a self-employed AV and systems tech. Not flashy, but I was good at what I did. I helped set up conference rooms, repaired sound systems, installed projection equipment, even handled emergencies for events and venues when their systems went down. I was the guy people called when they needed things fixed fast, especially when they didn't want their guests to notice something was broken. I didn't know it at the time, but that skill, the one I was mocked for, would be the reason. My phone rang on Laura's wedding day. It was around 10:40 a.m. on a Saturday. I was in my apartment, half-dressed, sipping stale coffee and watching a video about soldering techniques. My phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. "Hello? Max? It's Ethan, Laura's fiancé." That made me sit up a little. Hey, what's up?" There was a pause. I could hear stress in his voice. "Look, I know this is last minute and super weird, but we're having a major problem with the sound system at the venue. The mic setup for the efficient and the music cues, they're all messed up. The tech guy bailed. Laura's freaking out." I blinked. "Okay. Your mom said you do this kind of stuff? AV setups? Look, we'll pay you whatever. I need someone I can trust not to make things worse. Everyone else is either booked or too far. I should have said no. I really should have." But something in his voice, maybe desperation, maybe the fact that he was the only one to ask, made me pause. "Where's the venue?" I asked. Ethan gave me the address, a vineyard about 40 minutes away. It was one of those Pinterest-perfect venues with ivy-covered trellises and a big, modern barn-style hall. He sounded so panicked I barely had time to change my shirt and grab my emergency gear bag before I was out the door. As I drove, a weird mix of emotions churned in me. I hadn't been invited. I wasn't fit for the vibe. And yet, here I was, the one they needed when their polished plans started to fall apart. I wasn't bitter, not really. Okay, maybe a little. But more than anything, I just wanted to do what I was good at. And maybe, just maybe, prove a point. When I pulled into the venue's gravel parking lot, I could already feel the tension in the air. Bridesmaids were pacing in robes, someone was crying near the fountain, and two groomsmen were arguing by a stack of folding chairs. I walked toward the barn, lugging my equipment bag, when Ethan spotted me. "Max!" he called, waving me over, like I was the fire department. Thank God. He looked like he'd aged 5 years overnight. Tux jacket half on, hair frazzled. He led me inside the hall where the ceremony was supposed to take place in less than 2 hours. The room was gorgeous, polished wood floors, floral arches, rows of white chairs, but the sound system was a mess, cables everywhere. The main speakers was humming loudly, the mic was cutting in and out, and their playlist was stuck on a single looped piano track that had started to sound more like a horror movie score than romantic ambiance. We tried calling the AV guy, but he's not answering, Ethan said. Apparently he had another event and bailed last night after setting it up. Half the stuff wasn't even connected. I crouched down to inspect the soundboard. You got a diagram or any kind of plan from him? Ethan shook his head. Nothing. I think he just dumped everything here and left. I sighed but nodded. All right, I'll see what I can do. The next hour was a blur. I set up my own mics, the wireless lapel kind that actually work. Rewired the mixer, rebooted the receiver, and reprogrammed the speaker channels so they stopped feeding back. I tested the ceremony music, cleaned up the audio cue, and made sure the officiant's headset was balanced properly. Ethan hovered nearby the whole time, alternating between thanking me profusely and muttering about how Laura would kill him if the audio cuts out during the vows. By the time I finished, the difference was night and day. You just saved this entire wedding, Ethan said, genuinely stunned. Seriously, I don't know what we would have done. Glad I could help, I said, dusting off my hands. Listen, I know you weren't invited, he added, lowering his voice. And that's on Laura, but you should stay, please, at least for the ceremony. I hesitated. That was a line I hadn't expected to cross. You sure that's a good idea? I asked. She didn't exactly want me here, he grimaced. She'll get over it. Before I could answer, I heard someone call his name. Ethan, where are you? Laura's voice rang through the hall as she stepped in through the side door. She stopped mid-sentence when she saw me. Wearing a pearl-white robe and full makeup, bouquet in one hand, she looked every bit the bride you'd expect from a curated lifestyle blog. Her eyes flicked from me to Ethan, then to the equipment setup. What's he doing here? She asked sharply. He's the reason we have working sound right now, Ethan said firmly. Everything was falling apart. Max fixed it. Laura looked like she was trying to decide between gratitude and embarrassment. You could have told me. You weren't exactly in a state to discuss tech problems, Ethan replied. And it was my call. For a second, I thought she was going to tell me to leave, but she didn't. Instead, she nodded slowly, like it hurt her pride. Thank you, she said tightly, looking just over my shoulder. No problem, I said. I wasn't about to make this more awkward than it had to be. She left without saying another word. Ethan sighed and looked at me. Still want to stay? I chuckled under my breath. I think I'll hang near the back. So I did. I stayed for the ceremony, blending in with the waitstaff and vendors. I watched from the shadows as Laura walked down the aisle, picture perfect. And serene, completely unaware that just hours earlier, the entire event had been dangling by a wire, literally. As I stood there, watching everyone beam with joy, I realized something strange. I didn't feel bitter anymore. I didn't need their validation. I didn't need a seat in the front row. I had already proven myself in the most unexpected way possible. They might have left me off the invite list, but I was the one they needed when it actually mattered. I stayed quiet during the reception setup, content to hang in the background with the other vendors. It was funny. All these people dressed up, sipping champagne, taking selfies under fairy lights, and I was invisible to them. Not in a sad way. More like I'd been given a front row seat to a movie I'd already read the script for. I grabbed a soda and posted up near the exit door of the barn. That's when Mia, Laura's cousin, I think, passed by and did a double take. Wait, Max? I turned, surprised she even recognized me. Hey, I said, a little cautious. I didn't know you were coming. Laura said you weren't on the list. I smiled faintly. Yeah, I wasn't. She blinked. Then, how are you here? Ethan called me this morning. The sound system was toast. I came to fix it. Her eyes widened. You're the one. Who saved the audio? Guilty, she laughed, then said, Classic. You always were the guy who knew how to fix things. I nodded, not knowing what else to say. Mia wasn't rude to me in the past, but she didn't stick her neck out either. She'd just followed Laura's lead, like most of them did. You know, she added quietly, Laura was kind of harsh with that vibe stuff. Some of us thought it was unnecessary. I shrugged. She wanted a specific kind of day. I get it. Still, you being here kind of proves the opposite, doesn't it? I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The reception started soon after. I stayed, tucked behind the main entrance near the corner where the DJ was spinning chill pre-dinner music. He nodded at me in appreciation. I'd reprogrammed his speaker channels too. He didn't need to say thanks out loud. We were on the same wavelength. At one point during a lull, Ethan came over again with a plate of food. You eat yet? No, I said. Didn't think I was on the catering count. You are now, he said, handing me the plate. Don't argue. And hey, you were right, by the way. I raised an eyebrow. About what? About people underestimating. You. That hit harder than I expected, because I hadn't said it to him, not directly. But he knew. He always knew. Thanks, man. He clapped me on the shoulder. You sure you don't want to come sit with us? It's not too late. Nah, I'm good. This is enough. We watched Laura and her dad do their first dance. She looked radiant, no denying it. A few people gave me sideways glances like they were trying to piece together who I was and why I was here. Some probably remembered me from years ago, at family holidays or summer barbecues, when I'd show up in odd shoes or with purple hair and make some weird joke no one got. One woman, an aunt maybe, leaned toward another guest and whispered something while glancing in my direction. I saw it. I didn't care. Later that night, as things settled into dancing and mingling, I stepped outside for air. The stars were out, and the vineyard stretched in soft waves beyond the lights. That's when someone else stepped out behind me. Laura. I figured she was coming out to take a breather, but then she walked right up to me. Max. Laura. Awkward silence stretched between us. I didn't expect you to stay, she said. I wasn't planning to. Ethan insisted. He told me about the sound system, about how you came through. Like I said earlier, it's not a big deal. It is to me, she said, surprising me. I shouldn't have left you out. It wasn't fair. That stunned me more than I thought it would. You don't have to say that, I replied. The day turned out fine. Still, she said, folding her arms like she was bracing herself, I let the whole image thing get to my head. The Pinterest boards, the planners, the coordinated colors. I thought if everything didn't match perfectly, it would all fall apart. I forgot that people matter more than aesthetics. She glanced at me. You matter, Max. You always did. I looked away for a moment, letting her words settle. They weren't dramatic, they weren't overly emotional, but they were real. Thanks, I said. That means a lot. She gave me a half smile. So, friends? I chuckled. We'll see. She laughed too, then gave me a hug, quick but not performative, sincere. And just like that, she went back inside. I stayed out a little longer, letting the night wind cool my face. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't some grand moment of triumph, but it was something better. Quiet validation. I'd shown up. I'd helped. I didn't rub it in anyone's face. And the people who mattered saw it for what it was. Not weird, just different. And sometimes exactly what was needed. The wedding wound down around midnight. The fairy lights still glowed, now a little softer, like the venue was finally exhaling. Guests started slipping out, tipsy, barefoot, their makeup fading and hair undone from dancing. The air buzzed with the kind of exhaustion that only comes from a good party. I helped the DJ pack up some of the gear, more out of habit than obligation. Ethan spotted me and came over again, this time without the wedding day stress. "You sticking around to help take down chairs too?" he joked. "Depends," I said. "Am I on the payroll yet?" He grinned. "If I had my way, absolutely." We sat for a minute on the edge of the little wooden deck. Ethan looked out at the field and let out a long breath. "It really turned out okay, didn't it?" he said. "It did," I agreed. He nodded slowly. "I don't know if I ever told you this, but I always admired how you stayed you, even when people made fun of it." I blinked. That caught me off guard. "You were the only one in school who didn't change to fit in," he went on. "I thought it was weird back then, but I get it now. It takes guts," I chuckled. "That, or complete social oblivion." He laughed, shaking his head. "No, it was courage. Laura's starting to see it too. Took her a while. Well, you know how she is." I nodded. "She apologized. Earlier. I didn't expect that." "She meant it," he said. "I think today helped her see that different doesn't mean wrong. Sometimes it's the only reason things don't fall apart." We sat in silence again. I could hear someone inside trying to corral the last of the cake into to-go boxes. "By the way," Ethan added, "I've got a friend in town who runs an AV company. He's been swamped with bookings. If you're looking for more gigs, I can connect you." I blinked. "Seriously?" "Yeah, you're great at this stuff, and clearly you know how to fix disasters on the fly. He'd be lucky to have you." It wasn't a job offer exactly, but it was more than I expected from a day I wasn't even supposed to be at. I nodded, genuinely moved. "Thanks, Ethan. That'd mean a lot." Later, while walking back to my car with some cables over my shoulder, I passed Laura again near the eye. Barn door. She was holding a bouquet of leftover flowers, hair a little messy, makeup faded. The perfect image of someone who'd had both the best and most stressful day of her life. She gave me a smile that didn't feel rehearsed. "You taking off?" "Yeah," I said. Didn't want to turn into a pumpkin or anything. "Well, thank you again, for everything." I gave her a small smile. "You're welcome." She hesitated, then asked, "Would you come by sometime next week? I'd love for us to actually catch up. Not in wedding chaos mode." That surprised me. A week ago, she didn't want me within a mile of her guest list. "Sure," I said, not making it a big thing. "Just text me." As I got in my car and started the engine, I checked the rearview mirror. The barn glowed behind me. A small group was still dancing, their silhouettes flickering under the hanging lights. And for the first time in a while, I didn't feel like the outsider looking in, not because they'd changed, but because I stopped needing permission to belong. I went home that night exhausted but oddly at peace. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't vindication. It wasn't some epic takedown or mic drop moment. It was something better, quiet acknowledgement, from people who mattered. From people who finally saw me for who I'd always been. I was still weird, still didn't fit the mold, but that wasn't a flaw anymore. It was the reason I was called when things went wrong. It was the reason I mattered, and this time, even they couldn't deny it.